The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty plains of Arizona Territory as Jake Morrison rode his horse through the rocky canyon. It was 1883, and the land was still wild and dangerous. Jake was a cattle rancher who had been searching for his missing herd for 3 days. His water was running low, and his horse was getting tired. Jake was not like other cowboys. He had grown up on the frontier and learned to respect the Apache people who lived in these lands long before any white settlers arrived. His father had taught him their language and customs during peaceful trading times. This knowledge would soon save his life in ways he never imagined. As Jake rounded a bend in the canyon, he heard voices speaking in Apache. He quickly dismounted and hid behind some large rocks with his horse. Peering carefully around the rocks, he saw a shocking sight that made his blood run cold. A group of 6 rough-looking men had captured 3 young Apache girls. The girls looked to be between 15 and 18 years old. The men were not soldiers or lawmen. They were slave traders, the worst kind of criminals who roamed the frontier. These evil men captured Apache people to sell them as slaves in Mexico, where such horrible trade still existed. The 3 girls sat on the ground with their hands tied behind their backs. Jake could see the fear in their eyes, but also something else: defiance. These were not weak victims. They were fighters, daughters of warriors, and they would not give up without a struggle. The leader of the slave traders was a big, ugly man with a scar across his cheek. He was talking to his men about how much money they would make selling the girls in Mexico. "These Apache girls will bring us good money," the scarred man laughed. "Rich Mexican families always want Apache servants. They think it makes them look important." Jake felt sick listening to these men talk about the girls like they were cattle to be sold. He knew he had to do something, but he was just one man against 6 dangerous criminals. His rifle was good, but he could not shoot all 6 men before they might hurt the girls. As Jake watched and tried to think of a plan, he noticed something special about the 3 girls. Each of them had traditional Apache tattoos on their faces and hands. These were not ordinary tattoos. They were sacred markings that told the story of their family and their place in Apache society. The first girl had delicate lines tattooed around her eyes that showed she came from the Eagle clan. The second girl had geometric patterns on her chin that marked her as a medicine woman's daughter. The third girl, who seemed to be the leader of the 3, had the most elaborate tattoos. She had sacred symbols on her forehead and cheeks that showed she was the daughter of a war chief. Jake recognized these markings from his time learning Apache culture from his father. He knew that these tattoos were more than decoration. They were protection, identity, and power, all combined into sacred art on the skin. The slave traders were getting ready to move. They planned to travel south toward the Mexican border where they had contacts who would buy the girls. Jake knew that once the girls crossed into Mexico, they would disappear forever. Their families would never see them again. Jake's mind raced as he tried to think of a way to save the girls without getting them killed in the process. The slave traders were well armed and had no conscience about hurting anyone who got in their way. They had probably killed Apache people before and would do it again without thinking twice. Then Jake remembered something his Apache friends had told him years ago. They had explained that there were certain Apache traditions that even enemies had to respect. If someone claimed protection under these ancient laws, it created a sacred obligation that was hard to ignore, even for criminals. Jake made a dangerous decision. He would use his knowledge of Apache customs to try to save the girls. It was risky because if the slave traders did not believe him or did not care about Apache traditions, he would probably be killed along with the girls. Taking a deep breath, Jake checked his weapons and prepared to step out from behind the rocks. His heart was beating fast, but he knew this might be the only chance to save 3 innocent lives. The girls had noticed Jake hiding behind the rocks. The daughter of the war chief, the one with the most elaborate tattoos, caught his eye and gave him a small nod. Somehow she knew he was not an enemy. Maybe it was the way he moved, or maybe it was something in his eyes, but she could tell he wanted to help them. Jake stood up slowly and walked out from behind the rocks with his hands visible but ready to draw his gun if needed. The 6 slave traders immediately pointed their weapons at him, surprised by his sudden appearance. "Well, well," said the scarred leader with a nasty grin. "Looks like we got ourselves a witness. That means one more problem to solve." The other men laughed, understanding that their leader meant to kill Jake. But Jake was not afraid. He had made his choice, and now he had to follow through with his plan. The lives of 3 brave Apache girls depended on what he said and did in the next few minutes. The desert wind blew dust around the group as Jake prepared to speak the words that would either save them all or get them all killed. The 3 girls watched him with hope and fear in their eyes, waiting to see what this strange cowboy would do to help them. Jake looked directly at the scarred leader and spoke in perfect Apache language to the 3 girls. "I see you, daughters of the sacred clans. Your tattoos tell me who you are, and I claim the right of protection under the ancient laws." The 3 girls' eyes widened in surprise. This white cowboy spoke their language perfectly, and he knew the meaning of their sacred tattoos. The daughter of the war chief responded immediately in Apache. "We accept your protection, brother of the desert." The slave traders looked confused and angry. They did not understand what had just happened, but they could tell that something important had changed. The scarred leader snarled at Jake. "What kind of Apache nonsense are you speaking? These girls belong to us now." Jake switched to English and faced the dangerous men. "You don't understand what you've done. These are not ordinary Apache girls. Look at their tattoos carefully. That one," he pointed to the first girl, "is from the Eagle clan. Her family controls the sacred hunting grounds in the northern mountains." The slave traders looked at the tattoos but did not understand their meaning. Jake continued. "The second girl is the daughter of a powerful medicine woman. Her mother can call down curses that will follow you forever." Some of the men started to look nervous, but their leader just laughed. "Superstitious nonsense. Tattoos can't hurt us." Jake pointed to the third girl, the one with the most elaborate tattoos. "And she is the daughter of War Chief Thundercloud. Do you know what that means?" The name Thundercloud made even the scarred leader stop laughing. Thundercloud was famous throughout the territory as the most feared Apache warrior alive. "You're lying," the leader said, but his voice was not as confident as before. Jake shook his head. "Look at her forehead tattoo. See those lightning bolt designs? Only the daughters of Thundercloud are allowed to wear those markings. And those symbols on her cheeks? They show she has already been promised in marriage to another war chief's son." The daughter of Thundercloud spoke up in English, surprising everyone. "My father has 500 warriors. They are already looking for us. This cowboy speaks the truth about who we are." Jake was impressed that she could speak English, but he did not let it show. Instead, he continued his dangerous game of bluffing and truth. "I know Apache customs. I know their laws. And I know that Thundercloud never stops hunting for his enemies." One of the slave traders, a thin man with nervous eyes, whispered to his leader, "Maybe we should just leave these girls alone. Thundercloud is not someone to mess with." But the scarred leader was too greedy to give up easily. "I don't care who their fathers are. We can be across the Mexican border in 2 days. No Apache war chief can touch us there." Jake knew he had to try a different approach. These men were too greedy and too stupid to be scared by threats. He needed to make them believe that keeping the girls would bring them immediate danger. "You still don't understand," Jake said calmly. "I didn't just claim protection over these girls. I claimed them as my adopted sisters under Apache law. That means anyone who hurts them has to fight me first." The scarred leader laughed again, but it was a forced laugh. "You against all 6 of us? You must be crazy." Jake smiled and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. I challenge you to single combat for the freedom of these girls. Apache law says you have to accept if you want to keep them." This was not exactly true Apache law, but Jake was betting that the slave traders did not know enough about Apache customs to call his bluff. He was also betting that the leader's pride would make him accept the challenge rather than look weak in front of his men. The three Apache girls immediately understood what Jake was doing. They began chanting in their language, calling on their ancestors to witness the challenge. Their voices rose and fell in the ancient rhythms that had been used for such ceremonies for hundreds of years. The slave traders looked around nervously. The desert seemed to echo with the girls' voices, and the wind picked up, blowing dust in small whirlwinds around the group. Even the horses seemed restless, as if they could feel something supernatural happening. Jake knew that the chanting was helping to convince the superstitious criminals that powerful forces were at work. Many frontier men, even the worst ones, had learned to fear Apache's spiritual power after hearing stories of unexplained events. The scarred leader was trapped by his own pride. If he refused the challenge, his men might think he was a coward. If he accepted, he would have to fight Jake one-on-one, and Jake looked like he knew how to handle himself in a fight. "What are the terms?" the leader asked reluctantly. Jake had been hoping for this question. "If I win, the girls go free, and you and your men ride away and never bother Apache people again. If you win, you can take the girls, and I won't try to stop you." The daughter of Thundercloud spoke again, this time in Apache, telling Jake something that made him nod seriously. Then she spoke in English to the slave traders. "My sister says that if the cowboy dies fighting for us, our father will hunt you all for the rest of your lives. Apache memory is long, and Apache revenge is certain." This was not helping Jake's chances of surviving the fight, but it was adding more pressure on the slave traders to think carefully about what they were doing. The thin, nervous man spoke up again. "Boss, maybe this is not worth it. We can find other people to capture. These girls are more trouble than they're worth." But the scarred leader's pride was now fully involved. He could not back down in front of his men and the Apache girls. "Fine," he snarled. "I accept your challenge, cowboy. When I kill you, these girls will learn what happens to people who trust in Apache magic." Jake nodded calmly, but inside his heart was racing. He had committed himself to a fight to the death against a man who made his living through violence. The scarred leader was bigger than Jake and probably had more experience in deadly fights. The other slave traders formed a circle, eager to watch their leader kill the cowboy who had dared to interfere with their plans. The three Apache girls sat quietly, but Jake could see they were praying to their ancestors for his protection. As the two men faced each other in the dusty clearing, Jake realized that everything now depended on his ability to outfight a professional killer. The lives of three innocent girls and his own life hung in the balance of the next few minutes. The desert wind died down to nothing, and an eerie silence settled over the scene as the two men prepared to fight for life and death under the blazing Arizona sun. The scarred leader reached for his gun with lightning speed, but Jake was faster. Years of living on the dangerous frontier had made Jake's reflexes sharp as a razor. His Colt .45 cleared leather and fired before the slave trader's weapon was even half drawn. The shot echoed across the desert canyon like thunder. The scarred leader looked down in shock at the spreading red stain on his shirt, then collapsed to his knees and fell face first into the dust. The other 5 slave traders stood frozen in surprise. Their leader, the man they thought was the fastest gun in the territory, had been beaten by a cowboy they had never heard of. For a moment, nobody moved or spoke. Jake kept his gun pointed at the remaining men. "Your leader accepted the challenge under Apache law. I won fair and square. Now you need to honor the agreement and ride away." The thin, nervous man who had been worried about Thundercloud was the first to speak. The deal was with him. He pointed at their dead leader. "We never agreed to nothing." Jake saw the dangerous look in the men's eyes. They were thinking about rushing him all at once. 5 against 1 was bad odds, even for a fast gun like Jake. He needed something else to tip the balance in his favor. The daughter of Thundercloud must have been thinking the same thing. She suddenly stood up even though her hands were still tied and began singing in Apache. It was not just any song. It was a war song that called for the spirits of dead Apache warriors to come and fight beside their living brothers. The other 2 girls joined in the singing. Their voices rose and fell in haunting harmonies that seemed to make the very rocks around them vibrate with power. The sound sent chills down the spines of everyone listening, including Jake. Then something amazing happened. The daughter of Thundercloud somehow worked her hands free from the ropes. Apache girls learned many skills growing up, including how to escape from bonds tied by enemies. She quickly freed the other 2 girls, and all 3 stood together, still singing their war song. But they did something else that shocked everyone. Each girl pulled out a small knife that had been hidden in their clothing. The slave traders had not searched the girls carefully enough, thinking that young Apache women would not be dangerous. Now Jake was not alone. He had 3 brave Apache girls standing with him, each armed with a sharp knife and trained in fighting by warrior fathers and brothers. The 5 remaining slave traders suddenly realized they were not facing one cowboy anymore, but 4 determined fighters who would rather die than surrender. The odds had changed dramatically. Jake with his gun, plus 3 Apache girls with knives and years of warrior training, made a formidable fighting force. The slave traders began to back away, no longer confident about their chances. "Wait," called the thin man. "Maybe we can make a different deal. We'll leave the girls alone, and we'll give you some money for your trouble." Jake shook his head. "The only deal is what we already agreed. You ride away and never bother Apache people again. And you spread the word to other slave traders that this territory is protected." The daughter of Thundercloud stepped forward and spoke in perfect English. "I want to add something to this deal. You will tell everyone that the 3 daughters of the sacred clans are under the protection of Jake Morrison, the cowboy who speaks our language and honors our customs." Jake was surprised that she knew his name, but then he realized that Apache scouts probably knew the names of all the white men living in their territory, especially ones who showed respect for their ways. One of the slave traders, a young man who looked like he was having second thoughts about his chosen profession, suddenly threw down his gun. "I'm done with this," he said. "I never signed up to fight Apache spirits and cowboy gunfighters at the same time." His surrender started a chain reaction. Another man threw down his weapon, then another. Soon only 2 of the original 5 were still holding guns, and they looked like they wanted to run away as fast as their horses could carry them. The thin, nervous man made the decision for all of them. "We're leaving," he announced, "but this isn't over, cowboy. You made enemies today." "I'm not worried about enemies," Jake replied calmly. "But you should be worried about Thundercloud. These girls are going to tell him everything that happened here today. If I were you, I'd find a different line of work in a different territory, far away from Apache lands." The surviving slave traders gathered their dead leader's body and loaded it onto his horse. They mounted up and rode away quickly, looking back nervously as if they expected Apache warriors to come charging after them at any moment. As the dust from their horses faded in the distance, Jake finally relaxed and holstered his gun. The 3 Apache girls gathered around him, and the daughter of Thundercloud placed her hand on his arm. "You risked your life for us," she said. "Why did a white cowboy do this for Apache girls he had never met before?" Jake thought about the question seriously before answering. "My father taught me that all people deserve to be free. He taught me that Apache people are no different from any other people. They love their families, they honor their ancestors, and they deserve to live in peace." The girl with the medicine woman tattoos spoke up. "Your father was a wise man. But there is more to this story. You knew exactly what our tattoos meant. You spoke our language perfectly. You understood our customs and laws." Jake smiled. My father was a trader who worked with Apache tribes for 20 years. He married an Apache woman, my stepmother, after my real mother died. She taught me your language and your ways. She always said that someday this knowledge would save my life or help me save others. The daughter of Thundercloud smiled back. Your stepmother was a prophet as well as a teacher. Today her lessons saved our lives and your life too. Jake looked at the three young women standing before him. They were no longer frightened captives, but proud Apache daughters who had helped fight for their own freedom. Their sacred tattoos seemed to glow in the afternoon sunlight, marking them as members of important clans who would grow up to be leaders in their communities. What will you do now? Jake asked. Do you know the way back to your families? The first girl, from the Eagle clan, pointed toward the northern mountains. Our people are camped 2 days' ride from here. We were gathering sacred plants for ceremonies when the slave traders captured us. I'll escort you safely back to your families, Jake offered. It's the least I can do after what you've been through. But the daughter of Thundercloud shook her head. That is generous, but not necessary. We know these lands better than anyone, and we can travel faster without a horse slowing us down. Besides, our fathers will be looking for us, and they will find us soon. Jake understood. Apache people could move through their homeland like ghosts, covering ground faster than horses and staying hidden from enemies. The three girls would be safer traveling by themselves than with a white cowboy, even one who had saved their lives. As they prepared to part ways, the daughter of Thundercloud spoke one final time. Jake Morrison, you are now a brother to the Eagle clan, the Medicine clan, and the Thundercloud clan. Our tattoos will remember your kindness, and our children will hear stories of the cowboy who honored Apache law and fought beside Apache daughters. The three girls began walking toward the mountains, moving with the silent grace of desert cats. Before they disappeared into the rocky terrain, each girl turned back and raised her hand in farewell. Jake watched them go, knowing that he had just experienced something that would change his life forever. He had not only saved 3 lives, but he had also forged bonds with Apache clans that would protect him as long as he lived in their territory. Years later, Jake would discover just how true this protection was. When other troubles came to the frontier, when hostile tribes or dangerous outlaws threatened his ranch, mysterious Apache scouts would appear to help him. His cattle would be protected from raiders, his water sources would never be poisoned, and his family would always be safe. The sacred tattoos of 3 brave Apache girls had indeed become his salvation, creating bonds of friendship and protection that lasted for the rest of his life. And in the oral histories of the Apache people, the story of Jake Morrison became a legend that parents told their children about the importance of courage, respect, and standing up for what is right. The cowboy who had shouted, "Stop, I'll take them," had discovered that sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating enemies, but from making allies and earning respect through honorable actions.